Welcome to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm your host, Kristi Hujik, and thanks so much for joining us. We're so glad you're here. The holiday season is here, and today my co-host Megan Rupp and I are excited to share our go-to tips for staying healthy, happy, and nourished while soaking up all the special moments with family and friends. Get ready to enjoy the holidays with less stress and more balance no matter what situation you might face. Let's dive right into our favorite tips. All right, Megan, you're here, and we're going to discuss and break down a hot topic that's on everybody's mind here as we head into Thanksgiving and then the holiday season.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's my favorite time of year right now.
I would also say that this podcast is going to be a product, at least from my end, of people learning from my mistakes.
I would agree with that. Let's just say I'm a big fan of holiday parties, and I've definitely made my mistakes as well in a fun way. They're learning opportunities is what we're going to call them.
Exactly. There are no failures, just learning opportunities. That's the way we're going to look at it. So we're talking about how to make your holidays. My theory is like, you don't have to everything is just predicated on I'm going to go completely off the wagon. And then no matter what, I'm going to reset January 1st. That's like the general public view of this. But I don't feel like it has to be this way. I feel like you can have a good time and still have some indulgences, but not go completely off the rails.
And I agree with that. It's about balance. When I used to work in like gym management and personal training, and I'm sure you would hear this too, they would say that the average American gains up to 7 pounds during the holiday season from Thanksgiving to the New Year. And then in January, they lose 5 of it. So it's like, that's a wash. So like, if we could, I'm not talking about weight gain or weight management here, but maybe let's just make healthier choices balanced with other choices. And then you don't have to work as hard if you don't have to start from scratch is what we're going to say.
Exactly. And I think too, what it is we're going to try to hit all the different situations that you are all going to face, right? Mm-hmm. So that's, I'm doing the cooking. I'm going to family's house and I'm bringing something. And then there's the holiday parties. Do you want to comment on those and kind of what those are like and the different situations you've been in there?
Yeah. I mean, I used to host, and I still do, but I would say before pre-child, I would always host a Halloween party and a Christmas party. Basically, I'd bookend the holidays. And you know what? The Christmas parties, holiday parties had a lot of food, booze, great people, and it was just a like, do whatever you want kind of thing. And you wake up the next morning, you're feeling rough. And I just think that there's a way to balance these so that we can have the fun we want to have around the holidays, but also maybe not pay for it for a day after or even weeks after the older we get. I know I myself am paying for it a few days after nowadays.
Exactly. And there's a way to do it a way to do it, I think, when you're hosting. I think hosting is obviously the easiest because you have control of the menu, right? Yes. And so I think I've hosted, quite a few times in the last 8 years of kind of being on some kind of different eating protocol, whether it was Whole30 or whether it was, something that was closer to AIP. And I can't speak for everybody who came to our house, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say I've made things that were AIP compliant that no one knew were AIP compliant and no one complained. So there are recipes out there. They can be paleo-ish, they can be Whole30-ish that some of you might be, or AIP-like, and some of these recipes are delicious.
Yeah. There's a way to make these recipes, these classic recipes, healthy and nourishing and delicious. I mean, even alcohol comes into play a lot with the holidays. There's a way to make that and desserts even better options, better choices. So it's a great time to be alive during the holidays from a health perspective and a fun perspective is how I feel.
There was one year where we did Thanksgiving and Melissa Urban has this book that was about, hosting parties and kind of like a friends and family cookbook type of menu where it's like all about like things you could cook and you were hosting and they were Whole30-ish. And the one year I made this punch that she had that you could make. And we made a big thing of it. And there was also wine. Do you know that that punch, which by the way had a million ingredients, it was not easy to make, but it was
a complicated
delicious.
punch.
It was complicated. It was not a simple punch, but that was gone by the mid part of the day, mid part of the party or meal, and the wine was still there at the end of the night. That people loved the punch so much.
Well, I was definitely not at that party then, because I think I would have just mixed the two together.
Well, some people did. I was going to say that. The people that did want alcohol, how they handled it, it was like a sangria.
Yeah.
How they handled it is those people did put a little bit of wine in their sangria if they wanted it. But because it wasn't already mixed, it was interesting because they really wouldn't put that much. So they did modify that. So if it worked. That's the bottom line. So the bottom line is if you are seeking a way to not fall off the rails and still have something delicious and healthy, and it can be done. Is it a little bit of work? Yes. But let's talk about first what I think is the hardest to navigate, which is a holiday party. All right. Mm-hmm. So I know my first rule or tip is going to go hand in hand with what you're going to say. I'm going to tell you, do not go to a dinner party hungry, meaning do not go all day without eating. I told Megan this example when we were planning the podcast, and I used to. And this is a time when I was not metabolically flexible and was not capable of fasting for a long period of time and not being famished. Now I could do it because I've done that. I would go all day and be like, oh, I'm going to have so much good food at this party. I'm going to save all of it for that. And then what would happen is I would go and I would be so hungry by the point of the party, I would overeat the appetizers and then just overeat in general by the end of the night. So what's your tips? Because I know I don't want people to make that mistake.
See, I love that story because it goes into the first tip that I think makes everybody very successful of, like you said, don't go to a dinner party hungry. Don't just not eat all day to save up for those calories later because you're going to be fighting a battle you may or probably won't win. So I will tell you that my tip is to pregame. Now, this is not the pre-gaming of Megan when she was in her 20s. Megan now pre-games with protein as opposed to tequila shots. I'm not saying I'm perfect. We know we love our skinny margaritas. But if I'm going to a party, especially if I do not know what the food options are going to be, I'm going to have a protein snack before I go to the party, whether that is a grass-fed beef stick, a cup of bone broth, even a protein shake. Like Ancestral has a great organ meat protein shake that I will shake up and sip before a party because that protein will help you balance your blood sugar, and balanced blood sugar means less cravings and more control. So you're setting yourself up for success and you're honoring your body's ability to grow muscle if you are someone who's pretty active. So pregame with protein, not tequila, would be my first tip.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's kind of how I have handled it. If I've gone to a party after that is like, I do what you said. I'm seeking out some kind of veggies first. Mm-hmm. And which when people come to my house, there's always going to be a veggie plate. There's always going to be that veggie plate. Sometimes we had like, I think one of the other things that was in Melissa's book, there was a recipe we adopted that was for smoked pecans. And those were delicious. You roast them in the oven and they're pretty simple. So you had a healthy fat, you had some veggies, and then we had this chicken dip that her name is Jessie B. She's an influencer on Instagram, and I always tell people her recipes kept me alive during my first 2 Whole30s. She has this like chicken spinach dip that you can make, and it's all completely Whole30 compliant. And it's
awesome.
Delicious. So you get your protein there, right? You're actually not getting the dairy, so people could then dip the veggies in put the veggies in that dip, and they're getting their protein in it. So that's I think a really good tip that you had in there is with having those proteins and the veggies and even a healthy fat, when you first go to the party. And then the next one, so that you don't, this is a big one for me because I was this person, you want to be mindful, not mindless when you go to these. And it can be mindless when you go to parties. You're in conversation, Sometimes they're walking around with hors d'oeuvres. You're picking them up. You're not making a plate yourself per se, or you're standing next to the food and you're just not even making a plate. You're picking things off here and there. And then by the end of it, you have no concept of how much you've had.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. We stand there, and that can go both ways. Like it can go both ways in the sense of the food, or even standing by the bar with friends. Especially if people are coming around with glasses of wine and champagne. It's the same as the hors d'oeuvres. If it's going to be floating around, or if you're standing by the bar, if you're standing by the food, hey, let's move away from the things that are just mindless. Because I know if I have something in my hands, whether it's a drink, a piece of food, anything, I just keep going. It's going to be in my mouth, and it's a hand to mouth thing while I'm talking to you. So I agree that mindfulness is huge when it comes to where you situate yourself at a party, is what I would say. And what I would say to add on to that is being mindful of commitments. So what I like to do is make a commitment for the next day. Because I know if I'm at a party and the next day I have a 5K, a new group exercise class, or a commitment with a friend earlier in the morning, I am going to be drinking my water, eating more of the veggies and protein, because I made a commitment to myself, to my body, and to a friend. There's a funny meme that's going around that says, before you get married, find out if your partner's family runs 5Ks the morning of a holiday or drinks mimosas. And for me, I'm like, why don't you do the 5K first? And then if you want to have fun with your friends, have an adult beverage, maybe have a cookie or two. I really feel like that's the mindfulness that you're talking about, is that balance.
Yeah, it's definitely, and the 5K way is to have a beverage, and a cookie afterward,
yes,
right?
It's if I run a 5K on a holiday, that better be waiting for me, actually, please.
yeah, it's a pretty good way to do things. And I think, like, when I played basketball in college, one reason why I've never overeaten at Thanksgiving is that because I was trained back in the day, I knew we were going to have the hardest practice on the planet the day after Thanksgiving, because we were going to be tested to see if we were sluggish and we ate too much that day before. And our coach used to say, turkey has tryptophan, and she used to say turkey makes you stupid, so point guards can't have turkey. And anyway, we had big jokes about it. But let me tell you, if you ate too much on Thanksgiving, you would pay the next day. So it's like you said, there was this commitment, and to honor my commitment and honor what I have to do the next day. When I had to go to practice and drive back to school that next day, it was never, overeating on Thanksgiving was not a passing thought. So yes. I can understand that, and I can understand that. And then, the enjoyment, but being mindful can still happen, and I get it. You get carried away in conversations. And like Megan said, I think just taking those things out of your eyesight and your eye line, and then understanding, especially when we're talking about food here. Yes, of course, food brings people together, right? But remember what I said, food brings people together. It's a way to celebrate, but there's no rule that says the food has to be the absolutely most detrimental food to your body, okay? If you remove the food and the people were still there, you would still enjoy yourself. You would still have that connection. So sometimes it's good to just have that moment of pause and just say, you don't really need the alcohol to celebrate, friends. You can have a club soda with lime, and it's still a celebration.
Yeah. And I in my practice with health consulting, I talk about that with my clients, especially this time of year, because they'll say, I'm going to a family's house or a friend's house, and there's a lot of alcohol or food, and they're in a time of healing. And I tell them, I'm like, it's okay to tell your family you're taking a break from gluten, sugar, alcohol, just because it doesn't serve you. You don't have to tell them, I can't have that, or I don't want that. You can phrase it of just, hey, right now I'm in a season of healing. I'm just trying to feel better. I got to wake up early tomorrow. I've got some goals to do. So right now I'm staying away from alcohol, sugar, gluten, whatever it is that you're trying to better serve your body and yourself. And there's no shame in that. And the right family and friends will applaud you for making healthier decisions, in my mind.
Yeah, and no thank you is a full sentence.
Exactly. That people should understand.
Yes, it's a full sentence. And what you decide to say and how much you decide to disclose may be may be dictated by the person that you're talking to. And that's
Yes.
obviously everybody's personal choice of how you deal with it, because there is a stressor. Because the other thing, I know we weren't going to talk about this, but I think it's maybe a good spot to bring it in, that sometimes what do we do when we're stressed? We eat or we may drink when we're
Yeah.
stressed. And sometimes the family dynamic creates stress, right? So you
Oh,
have to
yes.
figure out how to deal with that.
Yes, I love my family. I love my friends. I have an amazing circle and they still stress me out. And I'm sure I stress some people out. So finding some stress relief before you go somewhere, that's huge. Like that's so huge because if you're constantly, like you said, hitting the food or the wine or the champagne or the cookies, you're probably looking for a dopamine rush as a response to that stress. So maybe find another dopamine rush, especially beforehand or after it. Have something to look forward after. Maybe you're going to go into your sauna blanket after. Maybe you're going to watch a cheesy Christmas movie with, your kid or, your best friend or your partner. Find something that produces that dopamine so that you don't have to rely on the quick hit of sugar, alcohol, the unhealthy stuff. I agree. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I know we're talking about, kind of bringing in like we're kind of in the other scenario now where we're talking about let's just say you're going over to another family member's house for a gathering. What should someone do if, let's say you're me, right? What advice would you give me if I'm eating a certain way and I know there's specific foods that maybe I'm needing to avoid? Like, what do I do? We hear this all the time from patients and clients, and there's that
Yeah.
panic of, oh my God, I have to go to my sister's and she doesn't eat healthy at all. Like, what do
Yeah.
I do? What do I do?
Yes. This is such a pivotal question here. And, I love my family, but I find myself doing this with them too. It's you can bring something to share that you can eat if you have very specific, we'll call it nutritional protocols you are on, whatever that might be, like AIP, the autoimmune protocol, low sugar, because you're trying to balance your blood sugar, Whole30, because I know you have a lot of listeners who have done that before. That's the moment where you can make something and share it with your friends and family. And then there's going to be at least one dish that you can have that you're not going to have to question the ingredients because you made it and you brought it. And from point A to point B, it has the food you can have and it's going to nourish your body as well. So don't be afraid to bring something that is compliant to the way you want to eat in that moment.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big one. And I get it. It is an
Yeah.
uncomfortable feeling, right? Especially if you're not sure what that other person is making. And the other tip I would give is just depending on whose house you're going to, sometimes you can safely have that conversation prior to going and say,
Love
hey,
that.
hey, Janine, what are you making for the party? I'd love to know because I'd love to help. I'd love to be able to bring something. And then even if you weren't asked to bring something, you can offer to bring something, especially if you're hearing a bunch of things that are like, ooh, I can't have that. Ooh, I can't have that.
Yep.
And you don't want to be rude. So if you do have that one thing you can eat, and sometimes, maybe have some emergency protein in the purse. I've done the meat stick thing and had that as a pinch, just because there's going to be some vegetables, I hope,
Yes.
that you can have, right? So having emergency protein, like that's always too what I'm offering. Like, oh, how about I make that? Like I've made that dip a bunch of times when I've gone to people's house, because God forbid that's the only protein I can have. At least there's spinach in it. There's chicken in it.
Yep.
You're getting healthy fats in it. Like you're actually getting a well-rounded snack there that you can fill some space. So I think the other rule that I've always had is if you do choose to indulge, let's just say you decide that, okay, it's worth it. I'm going to have some things that maybe I don't normally have, and you're indulgent. I like to bookend those meals with healthy ones, meaning the meal before and the meal the morning after. Like, don't go off of a wagon where you're going 48 hours straight of eating just horrendous food, because then you're really not going to feel good. But if you have that indulgent meal, just try to bookend these gatherings with healthy meals.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. It's that I'll start on Monday mentality where we have that party on Friday and you eat we'll just say not to your health standards. So then you're like, well, I might as well go to Saturday brunch with my friends. And then Saturday brunch becomes Saturday night pizza and then no workout Sunday. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We didn't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Like, let's pull back. So that is an incredible tip, Kristi, because let's just bring in the healthiness surrounding that meal. We don't need to just go and throw everything away until 2025. Like, come on, we're better than that.
Yeah, and I think we talk about also the alcohol content, right? So this applies to the alcohol too. Like for me, it's like I've learned over time that I may be going to have, a glass of biodynamic natural wine, which I'm always bringing to a gathering, so that I can have a drink of wine with my family, a toast or whatever. But keeping the alcohol content low in general is just going to help with everything. Your rest, even if you do have that meal that's a little overindulgent, having the alcohol with it is definitely not going to help you.
Yes. And the alcohol topic is huge because whether we are choosing, so not all of us are choosing to pause alcohol entirely. Some of us want to go to that party and instead of the cookies, they want a couple glasses of champagne. And again, there is no judgment. Let's just do this in a mindful way. So like you said, let's keep the alcohol content low, but also keep in mind there are certain forms of alcohol that are better than others. And I always like to remind ourselves the things like the craft beers, which, I do love. I'm not going to judge that, but the craft beers are huge in the fact that they spike our blood sugar. They contain gluten and toxins. Try to keep to that biodynamic glass of wine or maybe a gluten-free organic tequila with club soda, vodka and club soda. And let's not forget, even if you're making these healthier alcohol choices, there's other things that go into how alcohol affects your body, specifically drinking enough water and electrolytes because alcohol is a diuretic and it can dehydrate us, and making sure you're eating enough before you drink so that your body doesn't, we'll say, respond as negatively to the alcohol you're consuming.
Those are great tips. And I
speak from experience.
And I think that also, the earlier in the day you can have your alcohol. So let's just say you're going to a gathering and it's starting at 5. If you can have a drink or two when you first get there and you're getting your pre-gaming with your protein and all that. You've pre-gamed with your protein and you're reaching for the veggies and the protein and the fats that are the healthiest in the, the hors d'oeuvre fashion. And you have a couple of those drinks early, but then you switch over to say club soda or water, that's a good way to do it too, is that you can have your alcohol early. It's not going to affect your sleep and digestion so much that it's detrimental for the next morning.
Yes, exactly. Like coast a little bit. You know what I mean? Have a couple glasses, but then coast. That is a wonderful tip that I think we can all hear, especially again, if you decided to make that commitment the next day to yourself or to a friend to be physically active, to do that 5K, whatever it might be. You're going to thank yourself from the night before if you started early and ended early and then switched over to that club soda or, a mocktail or something like that. There's so many options nowadays.
And now we're going to finish off with some tips that have to do with doing the active things. One huge thing, and obviously, I'm not reinventing the wheel with this tip because this tip is always a great one for blood sugar regulation in general, but taking a walk after dinner. So if the gathering's at our house or even if it's at another family member's, I'm always encouraging everybody, hey, let's go for just a walk. After dinner. We live in a beautiful community, so it's not too hard to convince people to go around and look at the Christmas decorations or, around Halloween time, it was always, let's take a walk around the neighborhood and look at the Halloween decorations. So going for a walk and that movement can really help. And I know you've got a comment on that and also another way to do this.
Yes. And I would say that's a wonderful tip too. Because in the winter we tend to think like, oh, we don't need that. And it's like, yes, we do. Get some fresh air. I know that if I know that if I suggested going for a walk with some people in my family or friends, they might think, "Are you kidding me?" But I have a Friendsgiving coming up, and I'm pretty sure if I suggested, "Why don't we all go outside and like play some football?" I know quite a few of them would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm not walking, but I'll play football." So like whatever that activity looks like to you, and that's essential bonding time with your friends or family as well. So I love that. I love that. And I would say to add on to it is the sweat portion. And because both the physical activity and the sweating, it helps with blood sugar, cravings, and it's also that dopamine rush that we talked about, as opposed to just the alcohol and the cookies. This is a dopamine rush. I myself like to go in my sauna blanket and sweat, especially if I'm maybe not feeling up to a full on like game of football, which I usually am not. I'm usually the one cheering people on from the sidelines. But I think if you can sweat in any capacity, that's a really good idea within the 12 to 20 hours after a party too, even is beneficial. Yeah, I'm with you there.
We used to have those jokes, right? Whatever, when someone drank, you would say, "It's coming out of your pores."
Yes. Yes.
Right? I mean, there's some truth to that.
Yes, there is.
There's some truth to that. That's not just malarkey.
Yeah, the faster you can pull it out of those pores, the better you're going to feel. So whether that's getting outside for a brisk walk, a football game, or, getting in your sauna blanket, pick what you want to do the most because you're less likely to skip it.
This is a really fun thing that we do in our house on Christmas is that there's this one holiday ride. We have a Peloton, and there's this one holiday ride that Hannah Frankson does. And the music is just so fun. It's not necessarily all Christmas music. It's like a Christmas party music thing. So everything's like very sing along, very like just feel good. And we only have one bike, so we can't do the ride at the same time, but we each take turns doing it. And the other person's always in the room, like doing something or, getting things ready. And everybody's kind of just singing to each person's ride. So it becomes a fun thing if you can do things together like that.
Yes. It's actually, that's really funny because when I used to have my holiday parties, again, before pre-child, back in a little bit my younger days, we did an ugly sweater party. And halfway through the party, we would do a pull-up, push-up competition. I don't know why. We did it one year. And then from then on, it was a pull-up, push-up competition, the men's division, the women's division. And it just got everyone to stop, like, this is going to date me, but playing beer pong and eating cookies. And they were just like, all right, let's just do something. It was fun. It's whatever brings everyone together, but also maybe makes you sweat a little bit. I love that. And that's a Peloton ride. It's a competition. Like, we can get creative there.
Yeah, well, I can't, go anywhere near his output on the bike, but I always love getting on the Peloton it's always so fun anyway. But yeah, the music makes it, the music is fun. Yeah. So that's what we're saying, just be able to share and bond and get somebody to get a friend to participate or your significant other. And it's fun. But I think the last tip's probably the biggest one that we're going to end on. This is the most important thing about the holidays.
Yeah. And I think, Kristi, you and I, as friends and coaches, we talk about this quite often with ourselves and with the people we coach. And I would say that it's giving ourselves grace and forgiveness. It's not just grace, but it's also forgiveness. These are the holidays. They're fun and amazing and incredible, but they also can be difficult. It can be tough times too. It can be stressful. We're running around, we're doing a lot. And, remember to love yourself and forgive yourself, especially if you fall off that wagon or you don't meet your goals. Tomorrow's a new day. The sun's going to come up and you're going to still be that person in your body. And the big thing is the stress and the shame that you might feel from the decisions you make sometimes is going to hurt yourself more than the actual decisions you made, because we know the effect of stress and shame on the body. So you're always giving me great advice about this. So please elaborate if you can.
Yeah. Dr. Cole's always been really great about saying that the stress of not having the food can be worse than having the food itself.
Absolutely.
And that is true. And how we treat everything with each other and how we treat it with clients is that everything is a learning experience. So no matter what happens, you're going to learn something. And it might be, hey, I'm really proud of myself because I've never been that mindful of what I've been doing. So hopefully they listen to our podcast. And I'm a big believer in planning plus preparation equals success. Yes. And that if something is truly worth it in the moment, and that's what you decide to do, then you you're not going to feel guilty about it after. You shouldn't have guilt or shame. Now, does that mean you would say you would make the same decision again based on the results? Maybe not, but maybe you would, so that's really, I think, how to do it, and get the judgment out of there, and just enjoy your families, be grateful for what you do have. There's plenty of people that the holidays are harder than others. And I know that, and my heart goes out to them, because the holidays can be a really difficult time emotionally. And so it's give yourself grace, give yourself a big hug, be around those you love and hug the ones you love, and just, get the natural dopamine hits.
Yes.
The natural dopamine hits, and get a bunch of serotonin out in the world, and,
Yeah. It's, and I used to have like clients in the gym. So this is again years ago, where somebody would be like, oh, it was like time lost because I wasn't working towards my goals. And I'm like, first off, it's not time lost if you're with your family or your friends around the holiday. But I said, don't think of it as time lost. Think of it as wisdom gained. You learned your lesson, you overindulged, you didn't make the best decisions, but think back, like you said, and I love this advice you give to people. I hear it all the time is, okay, well, look back. Why did you make those decisions? Let's plan and let's prepare for the next time around. There's your wisdom right there. You know what I mean? It's a learning experience.
For sure. We're always learning. And that's why we're sharing with all of you, is because we've learned from our experiences. I mean, it hasn't always gone well for us. This has not been our blueprint. We hope that this podcast can help someone else kind of make a plan going in and say, look, there's no reason why I have to say, okay, I know I'm going to be off the wagon for the holidays, but man, January 1st, I'm going to get back at it. Doesn't have to be like that. You can still have your fun and your good times without being completely off the wagon. But if something goes awry, you reset, and tomorrow's a new day. Get yourself a healthy meal the next day. After that, get back to things and what serves you right. So Megan and I wish everybody a happiest of holidays for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, the New Year's. All of them are going to come fast and furious. And of course, we've got some podcasts in between, but we wanted this to be your blueprint, right, Megan?
Yes. And you know what? For anybody who falls off, we're going to be right here with more episodes on how to get your butt back on. So we'll be here.
And likely going to also have something available in January for you and your friends when you do have to reset, because it's not a horrible thing to do a reset every January the way the world is. And of course, if you have indulged over the holidays, there is going to be an option. There's going to be a way to reset. So stay tuned for that. You can all follow Megan and I. We're going to not with the holiday episode. We're not necessarily going to bookend this with our businesses and all that stuff, because you all will be able to see this in the show notes always. So if you need to contact us or continue the conversation, you can definitely contact us on social media. Right, Megan? Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Ripple Effect Connection. Let's create waves of change together.